First of all, I'd like to welcome you all here. I'm not too sure if many of you know who I am or remember who I am. You may recognize the voice, but originally I was on the client support team at Terminal4, and I was I'd done about 2 years service there, and from then Piero decided to take me on, bring me under his wing, so I'm now sort of, as my title says there, Pre-Sales Consultant with Terminal4, so well part of the S&M team in Terminal4, that's the sales and marketing. From there, but it's been a great experience. Probably been 6 months in the role now at the moment. I've seen a lot of new things, a lot of exposure to new technology, so it's great, cutting edge technology the whole time, seeing a lot of new things. Myself and Piero have been around, we've seen a lot of each other. We take holidays together, as you can see, going around give it the whole T4. It's kind of the universal symbol for the company. I think, but we sort of decided a few weeks back, the guys came to me and said, Mick, would you mind doing a presentation and sort of, I don't know, the people who's on it. By the way, that's top of the Willis Tower in Chicago. It's not Photoshop, but it's a good photo. But the guys came to me a few weeks ago and said, how do you think about doing an L talk on what you think is great about the product? So we said, great, come up with this idea, we'll call it Mixed Picks. So I said, try to make it mixed picks so I could show my family photos down through the years of my holiday travel, that sort of stuff. But it's actually my best picks of the product. So we done a brainstorming session back at base, I got everyone's opinions on what they think is good in the product. So we sort of made a list out of that. And from that, we decided to come up with a sort of a slight agenda, what we think would be great for you guys to see. Because there's some fantastic things in the product that some people are utilizing and other people aren't. And I don't think people are actually aware that they're there. So what I want to do is give you a quick flavour of what's there. But as well as that, it's okay for me to go through slides and stuff like that and just say it's there. But I'm going to actually go through demonstrations of what's actually in there so you know where it is. And all the examples that I do today are based on our new sample data that's going to be released next week with our revision 8. It's got originally when we launched version 7 last year, t44u, we shipped a sample site with it that contained a lot of examples. But our new sample data site that is going to be ready to go next week. We'll have a lot of new examples in it. And a lot of people say, well, I've got version 7 already, or I'm on version 6.2. I'm not going to be able to because it comes pre-packaged with the installation. Well, we have Barry later on today, which is really exciting technology, is the fact that you can actually take from your development environment, you can, through what we call T4 bundles, you can export assets, content from a development environment and suck it right into your live environment. So what we plan to do is to give you a copy of the sample data in a zip file, and you can suck it up through the external or through the T4 bundles. So what I'm going to go through, so what's new in the product? I'm going to go through some new bits. Then I've got my top 10, which is sort of a countdown to the top 10 things I think are fantastic about the product. And then I've got hidden gems, which is what I mentioned earlier, about different things that are in there. They're hidden. Some people are using them, some people are not, so it might be quite boring, or people already know about it. For a lot of people, hopefully, it's new stuff. And then we've got Paul's pit stop. Okay, so if you don't know Paul's Paul Kelly, our head software architect in the company. He is Mr. Terminal4 site manager over the product. I actually asked him would he mind putting on the Steed costume for it, but it didn't really make sense because he'd probably stand there and not say anything anyway, so it wouldn't be very informative for you. And then we've got Andy Sunderland. He's one of our software developers also who's in there. I've got him to do Andy's Wall of Wonder. Andy's one of probably Terminal4's biggest Harry Potter fans, so I tried to zip it up, give it a bit of magic, and I came up with a sort of funky name for Andy's Wall of Wonder. So it's some pretty really cool stuff in there. I don't know if you've already seen last year, there's different widgets that come in the main site structure. Pretty informative. Some of you might find them relevant, some others irrelevant. But he's made it all customizable now, and some pretty cool stuff in there. And there's actually, hopefully it still works, a Google Analytics widget. So you can actually have a widget on your site that displays all the Google Analytics from your actual main site. And there's some other cool stuff in there for administrators only. So he'll get to that later on. Okay, first up, we have sort of what's new in the product. So a year on, we're just on the verge of releasing revision 7 revision 8 of Site Manager 7. And it's a case that we just want to get across that we're continuously shoving out new features. Every revision, just there's some examples there, some really good examples of new features that are really, really good, and they're constantly being shipped out with the product. So it's not a case that they're bug fixes. There's continuously shipping out those brand new features. What's coming out next week is just for an example of this new stuff that allow you archive sections, which will allow you to give it's there for performance to help you with publishing. The new sample slide, as I mentioned, improved SEO reporting, which I'll show this morning, and some extra cool stuff. So I just want to make the point that we're actually continuously releasing brand new functionality into the system, and it's definitely worth your while upgrading anyway, guys, if you do it. So, with no further ado, I'm going to go straight off into what I find is my top 10 in the system. It's the countdown, first of all. So what we have, illustrated at number 10, I have, it's a pain. People have done through the years, they're somewhere inside of the product and they want to get back to the site structure. You've got it through two clicks. We've made it so you got one click now that brings you back to the site structure. In at number 9, we have Windows 7 gadgets, which are really cool. It allows you, we have a special gadget I'm going to show you now in a minute that allows you to gadget on your desktop that shows you when the next publish runs, so it's a countdown. Cool. The data object, it's one of my favorite things. I don't think it's utilized as much as it should be. Probably the best example we have, or Brian over in UCD is using it. He's made a great research application out of using the data object, pulling information from 5 or 6 different external systems to make up one great research web page. And in at number 7, the publish now functionality. It's what people have asked for a while. It's quite cool. If you want to make a quick update to your main site, if you want to publish out to an alert message or a warning, you can just publish straight out that homepage straight away. So I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of those features that I mentioned. Okay, so first of all, I'm in my navigation page. I want to get back to the site structure. What do I do? Before you go into content, site structure, it's quite simple, but it's really easy and it's great. Click on the T4 logo, brings you back to the site structure. It's very basic stuff, but it's definitely something that I think people will be delighted to see. The next one I said is my Windows 7 gadget. So quickly about that, you can see there. Whoops. That's one quickly. Set my publish. Well, whatever. Everything always goes wrong. Okay, this is sort of a Windows gadget. It should be working. It was working earlier. That we have now that you can download from the T4 Extranet. It's just a gadget there. It counts down. You can have as number all your channels there, so people are aware the countdown to the next actual publish. So if they're waiting for something to go live, they're aware when that actual publish runs. Okay. Pardon me? We'll try our best. We're sure we can.
Absolutely. I'm not going to be doing it myself.
Okay.
I think this is a really good example. It's just an example of using the web services to expose some of the data that's in the content management system into other widgets. We're not, it's not necessarily like the biggest new feature in the world, but it's sort of a good idea of what you can do with web services.
Exactly. External web example. Okay, this is an example just of our data object. Do we have actually many people in the room that are actually using the data object? Can we get a one? Man dunk. Anybody else? Two. Guys, the potential of it is absolutely huge. This is just a quick example we have on our sample site. It's just pulling in user information from our T4 user table and system, and you can easily publish it out. It's easy to format and everything, so you just define your formatting. You just define what the actual connection string is in the template, and off you go. You can pull it out and format it anywhere you want. Okay. The Publish Now functionality, it's available in 2 locations. If you're in the section and you want to publish a section, it's fair enough, you can go and hit the Publish Now and publish the section. If you're modifying content, the Publish Now option is also available there. So what that actually does is when you hit Publish Now, it approves the content and pushes it out. So it's sort of a 2-step process pushed into one. So it's quite handy. You can define who it's available for administrators down to moderator level, I think, and it's in the hierarchy handler where you enable that. So it's quite cool. And definitely something. Any likes or dislikes in the room for that?
Is that transfer?
Pardon me?
Is that transfer?
No, at the moment it's just to publish. But
Transfers.
Well, you don't use
Yeah.
transfer manager anyway, do you?
it's just to publish at the moment.
Yeah.
But we've got the granularity of going down with the transfer manager to get it down to you can do a transfer of every 10 minutes or so. So within 10 minutes, you can get that live. Okay, back in the presentation. So that's my first top 4 in the top 10. So what I'm going to go into now is my hidden gems, what I think are nice in the product, nice to haves, that people should be aware of, that they may not be aware of. Okay, site structure. We brought to you the sort of the new interface last year. And I'd like to point out that Graham, who's down the back, who's our T4 for the day doing our tweeting, he's the guy who came up with the interface, and I'm not sure if people are I like sort of being in support and that kind of back through the years. People are due credit at some point, so I think Graham just get a special mention for that, for designing the interface. But from there, the site structure. It was a welcome change to version 6.2. What we've brought into it is this extra functionality, so you can search for content by name. So in the search widget before, you used to be able to just search by section. Now you can actually search by content name. The access sections by clicking on the section name, so you don't have to anymore go into the drop-down menu and choose your modify section. You can easily just modify section, as I did earlier, by clicking on the section name. We've improved SEO reporting. So SEO reports now, it was just, you could download a report. We've made it available for, I think, to moderator level, that you can now actually, through the interface, to show in a second, click and actually see your actual SEO report and how relevant it is and how good it is. And also the functionality of drag and drop in sections. Dead handy, so you can rearrange your information architecture easy enough. So, without further ado, then in the sections, we've added in, while you're modifying a section, there's new features. Like, it's simple, but it's good. It's a spell check on the name of the section. You can now define an SEO key phrase for that section. So when you're doing SEO reporting or when you're publishing out, you have you see how relevant it is. Output file name. So if you, for example, are migrating a site into the system, but you have say a published prospectus that has a lot of links that are already in the prospectus, and you want to keep those links the same, you now have the choice to actually give the URL an actual full file name. So you can call it whatever, mic.html. So you have that element there, which is quite handy. There's a metadata template there. I'll show it to you in a minute. It may look strange to you, but it's quite handy. It allows you to define, say, a permanent description for that section, so you don't have to define a piece of content to be a description for that section. Also in there, we've template and style creation. Some of these are kind of pratfalls that weren't there before, that we sort of fixed up and are there now, which I think are great. That when you're editing a template and style, they're now locked. I don't know if anybody here has gone through the phase where someone was editing a style or template and at the same time someone else was. Anybody here ever happened? It's messed up? Okay, down the back. Thanks, Deirdre. Deirdre's our trainer. But it's quite simple. It works the same as when you're editing content. The little red dot will tell you who's actually editing it. Also, when you're editing templates, I know this is probably Stracklight guys had a few issues with this, I think, before, that when you're actually adding a template, before you can easily add a template without adding any template elements to it. Now, when you go to try and add a template, it prompts you to say, please add elements if you don't have any elements in there. They're simple, but it's just makes life a whole lot easier for you guys and your users. So I'm just going to, this is just a quick section. Sorry, the resolution of the screen has slightly cut it off. But as you can see, your typical output URI, that's where you drop in your SEO key phrases. So you can match that against your SEO reports. Then you have your output file name. So this is where if you want to name the section, say make.html, you can actually name it there. So when you set that on publish, it will publish out that in your URL. So if you, obviously in your prospectus, as I said, if it's hard-coded in your prospectus, you can hard-code it in there too. This is the description field, okay? So this is our metadata template. So this gives you, this can be any template element that you want to be plain text. I've set it to be a HTML editor, the WYSIWYG TinyMCE. What you can actually do here, obviously you can remove all the options available, but you can define a certain description to go with that page. So as you know, when you publish out a page, the section automatically comes in. Well, if you have it set that way, you can define a permanent description to go with that. It's quite handy instead of adding a piece of content, and it's something you can control too as administrators. The usual, this is sort of our new archive section. Paul will get to that when he gets to our publishing and performance tips and tricks later on, so he'll tell you what that's all about. Come back into the site structure here. You'll see that we now have the SEO reports. You've seen the color coding before, but if you actually click on it, it brings you actually into the SEO report, and it gives you exactly where it's going wrong. You get extended data on it, so you can. It actually pulls the content out from the content that's in the section and tells you where all your key phrases are and set. So it's quite handy. And there's, I think Niamh later on is doing a presentation on it, so she'll go into it in more detail for you guys. As I said, the search for content is there, and also, I think it's covered everything on that there. So, Also in there, it's like new improvements in the media library, okay? Auto-publish media. So what it allows you to do now, you can publish automatically a certain media type. So if you're not actually using certain images within Terminal 4 that you need for other applications elsewhere, you can set certain media types or certain categories to auto-publish. So no matter what, they will publish out. So all the content in that category will publish out, which is pretty powerful. There's also a category workflow, so you can now put, if you're adding media to categories in the media library, that you can now apply a workflow to that. So if you have a certain area that's quite sensitive and or a certain category, you can create a workflow for that category. And it goes through the normal approval workflow process. All media now is multilingual, so you can have multiple, the same content, or sort of the same piece of media can be multilingual for the different sites, and you can set the different the different metadata and alt tags on that, or the alt information on it. You can search by media name, quite simple again, but yet powerful. So I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Then the media types, okay. We now allow for inline editing. So if you CSS in the media library, if you modify your CSS in the media library, you don't have to download it anymore. You can do that directly within the media library, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. It's really powerful, and you also have the option, obviously, to use WebDAV to do it, but it saves the confusion of downloading, editing, and uploading back into the system again, so you can easily make changes on it. Okay, quick pop quiz. Who can tell me the process of adding a new media type in version 6.2? There's a voucher on the line. Right, go on, Duncan. Pardon me? Harry? Yeah, right. And that's all been changed now, so it all can be added through the interface. It was quite a pain before. You have to go in and edit the media type table and add in your media type there, and you just simply, as you add it into the system, I'll quickly show you in there. So the search functionality, it's in there. We have our, if you want to search for your like image, I should have a like image in there. It shows up easily. If I edit my category here, you'll see now there's a whole new range of tabs. The workflow tab will now allow you to set a particular workflow for that actual category in the media library. There's also the auto-publish, like I mentioned before. So for this category, what you can do is you can set the actual media type to auto-publish within that category. So if you select it, it'll always publish every time. So that media will always be pushed out to the site, whether it's used in content or not. The inline editing that I mentioned before, that's it. If I go into my CSS, if I modify this CSS here, you'll see now this is now editable here through the inline editor that's in there. So I'll show you where that's set also. So it makes it quite powerful that you can actually do that and not have to download it before. Pardon me? Yes. Oh, sorry, Harry asked if it does it keep a history of it. Yes, but it's all the content has a history kept of it, and because media items are treated more or less the same as content items, so you can actually roll back. Sure thing.
Do you keep history of styles and templates, or any thought of doing that? Because that's our nightmare, is people change styles and templates, we can't see them.
Yep. Styles and templates are stored exactly the same as content. So they're stored in sort of like in the system. There's a sort of a hidden section that you store. It's stored in. That's the way we operate. So it actually is. If you do want to roll back, it is possible to do so. That we can. Yeah. Well, it's always been there. Yeah.
There's an enhancement you put in to actually make the rollback part of the user interface, but it is actually all version control. All that information is version control.
Yeah. Okay. This is the method that for media types before, you can easily add a new media type. Before, you have to go into the database, make certain modifications, get specific IDs so you don't overwrite other media types that are there. Now it's simply you define what the actual new media type is. If you set it to be binary, then that means it's editable within the media library. You can also set it to parse for T4 tags that are within it, and as before, the same defaults to setting maximum size. From there, just remember when you do add it in that you do need to set formatting for that particular media type. Yep, sure. Pardon me? The actual...
The existing ones.
Oh, yes, you can, yes.
you repeat the question?
Yeah, he asked me, can you modify? So this is the option here, so the different media types. So if you wanted to modify the media path type, you can actually do it there also. So you can add in certain, if you wanted different extensions for it, so you can add them in there also. Okay. On to the next one. Some more of my hidden gems will be sort of in the different, we've added new functionality, different handlers that are in there. So TinyMC handler, you can now create multiple editors in there. So multiple versions of TinyMC. What that allows you to do would be, the most powerful thing is that you could have different groups, and within those different groups assign different editors. So every editor has different buttons, different options available. So depending on the experience of the user, you can have the HTML tab in there for some groups, take it out for others. The cluster handler, I don't think anybody has made use of this yet, but what it allows you to do is, it's another sort of enhancement for performance. You can have Site Manager obviously installed across the cluster, but what you can do then is define a dedicated publishing server, so just that server takes care of publishing and does have no input on user activity, so it's completely dedicated just for publishing. The media handler, this is pretty cool actually, I'll show you in a minute. You can predefine the actual, if you add a piece of media to the system, you can predefine the number of variants of media or of an image. Broken link handler, it came in earlier in the year, but it's actually now improved. You can schedule actually the link check in the system for internal and external links. Channel handler, you can enable global cleanup. So within version 7 now, it automatically, you can set a channel every time to publish to clean it up. So if there is redundant files in the server, it will remove those. You can set it globally there as well. And then the publish handler, the enable the publish now option, which I showed you earlier, and you can actually show pending sections now in preview. It should quickly just bring me into the handlers where I can show you some of those options. For example, the cluster handler. Within here, you can specify, you can enable the clustering, and from there you can specify the actual details the server supports. And there you can see there that you can actually use you can set which one to use as your dedicated publishing server. In the media handler here, this is where you can enable a certain media size. So if you want to add in here, you can set what the variant name will be and specific variants for that. It also keeps it so you can keep the aspect ratio or keep it absolute. So if you automatically say add a JPEG to the system, it automatically will create those variants for you, and you can add as many of those as you like. It does, because in the media library you do have the power to create certain variants, but just if you want to have, say, automatically create a certain thumbnail image that's going to be used across the site or on the home page, you can automatically set it in there.
Sorry, would it not be easy for the handlers to have a drop-down section instead of a string? Just make it for the end user.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
just repeat.
Yeah, it's just wondering if it was easier to have a drop-down selection for adding sort of the different media types and different extensions. I guess what that allows you to be, for the fact that it's only available for administrators, they can define the extensions there. So we don't want to restrict you to actually use a certain number of extensions. You could add more to the database, yeah, but.
No, I meant the actual handlers. If you go back.
Sure.
There, like you have all the handlers there. Now, where exactly do you pull all them from? Like, how would I go adding a handler?
To add a new handler, it's as simple as add handler. All the handlers and the list of handlers available on our extranet. And from there, you can copy and paste it from there. The majority of installations now have all handlers available there. They may not be enabled, but they're actually there. I guess it is a good observation that we can possibly have all this, an option for drop-down to enable those handlers in future. But yeah, everything's available on the extranet for the list of handlers that are available to add those in. Okay. If we go on, new navigational objects. These are probably some of my favorites. You'll see them later on in the rest of my top 10. The pagination navigation object. It's something people have been asking for a while. So you can, if you add content, you can set a limit to pull in content from elsewhere. So if you can set a limit of 5 pages. So if it's pulling in 10 pieces of content, it will automatically paginate to 2 pages at a time. I'll show you a quick example of that. Is a keyword search content nav object, which we use extensively with the UNA's project. It's quite a complex setup, and what they wanted to do was show information based on a piece of metadata. and I'll show you the setup of that in a minute. It's quite powerful. And then there's one thing we came across. Some people haven't found much use for it, but other people have. It's related content, grandchild nav object. So it allows you in a grandchild section to display related information in the actual grandparent from the grandchild section. In users, we've added in the functionality that you can now have subgroups, so you can have a group within a group, which is quite powerful for the fact a lot of people are members of multiple groups, but you can have one group that can be part of another group instead of constantly adding users in and out of groups. This is something that we've been working on for a while, or it's been in the pipeline for a while, is that when you come onto the T4 extranet, you now can view your support items. It's something that's been developed in-house, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Wayne and client support. He's actually been the brains behind the operation. That's actually, and I'm not too sure if he set it live yesterday, or is it to go live soon? I don't know. Dislike Wayne? Okay. But that's set to go live next few days. So when you log in, you'll be able to see your actual support tasks within the T4 extranet. Okay. Direct edit. We all seen it last year. Can I get an honest opinion of who's using it? Is there many people in here that are actually pushing out direct edit to their users? Okay, okay. Which I think is a major shame, because it makes life so much easier for your contributors to use. There's one. I'll quickly go into direct edit here. We've modified it a certain way. We launched it last year with a product, and it was quite raw when you've seen it in its raw form last year, but there's added functionality that you actually can disable direct edit, so you can actually get a full view of the screen. It's kind of pushed off to the side here, guys, the moment you see the resolution. It's always like that. You have the option, obviously, to modify. You can work in full screen for your HTML WYSIWYG. You can update that, and also if you're a moderator in the system, we've added in the added functionality that you can actually, as a moderator in direct edit, you can actually approve or reject that content or delete it, so it gives you that added easy functionality instead of going actually back into the interface. Yes, it does, yeah. There's also the extra little functionality of clicking on the logo again. It brings you back into the site structure, which is quite handy too. A lot of people's fears, I think, maybe surrounding that they don't want to actually publish out onto their live site this direct edit functionality here, which is how you actually get into the direct edit mode if our users are going to use it. One great example is actually Lee in the University of Virginia in the United States. What he's done, he sent me on the script last week. It's a .NET script that actually detects the IP that you're coming in from, and based on that, it places it on the page. So if anybody'd like to see that code, I'll be glad to share with you afterwards. Okay, Paul is going through the whole, and probably in about 10 minutes or so, Paul is going to go through the process of some tips and tricks on publishing and performance and everything, but we've added in some new things into the publishing to make life easier. You can now set it down to a low level of 10 minutes for every publish. The auto-publish, you can actually auto-publish a section, which I hope Paul will cover in a second. So if you add a piece of content to a section, it will automatically publish that section. And there's also a secondary language disclaimer. So for multilingual sites, which I think is quite important for some of the guys in Wales and Ireland as well, that have multilingual sites, you can actually set a disclaimer on a page or on a channel. What that means is if you automatically add content in one language to a page and it doesn't actually have the second language that you have, say Welsh or Irish, if it doesn't have content, it'll automatically output a disclaimer in its place to say that this content is currently unavailable or is in translation at the moment. Okay. Brings me to the whole languages side of things. Lists are now multilingual, link sections, metadata tags, and all the media library items that I covered earlier. They are all now multilingual within the system. Then the secondary published language, which I mentioned earlier. Quickly go into my channel configuration. I'll show you where that is actually set up. So here we have our list of languages in our channel set up to say where every channel different that your site actually publishes out into. Within here you can edit your disclaimer. So if you added an English and you want to say added a Spanish disclaimer, within there it opens up the translation disclaimer for the Spanish section, so that when you publish out in your English section, this disclaimer will automatically be added to the Spanish version of that page. It simply is just adding a small little T4 tag into the formatting of the template that you're adding the content in.
You got multilingual dates?
Multilingual dates.
That for
Yeah, I was wondering if we have multilingual dates, so yeah, we do.
David will show you how to do that later on. No.
Okay, which brings me back to my next few items in my top 10. In at number 6 we have clickable SEO reporting, which I showed you already, pretty handy. Number 5, auto-publish media, what I've obviously gone through already. You see the benefits of it. Number 4, the section keywords nav object, quite powerful. Through there. And also the pagination nav object. What we've also done with the section keywords nav object, that we've added the pagination, so it's both. So you can set in your keywords nav object to pull in a certain amount of information and then paginate it depending on the number of pieces of content you have in there. Okay. I was going to do a quick demonstration of those items, but I think I've sort of covered them all earlier. So without further ado, I'm going to get the Stig up here to do Paul's pit stop. So if you can. Paul makes his way slowly up.